Welcome to the show, Paradigm Review Show. Welcome to the channel, PXF Planet X Filmworks. Back to our PXF Classics series. So this is obviously Blade Runner 1982. We got asked about this a couple shows back. Told you guys I would bring it to you and go check out our last episode, The Crow 1994. That was a sick episode. A lot of good audience interaction on that one. Just some channel updates. So I went ahead and I updated the camera to 1080p. Unfortunately, you can see this ugly logo in the top left. StreamYard caps us at 720p. So even though Gaz and I both have a higher quality, it's actually not going to come across to you guys. So we're still working on that. Let me know on my audio level too, guys, because I am using the new camera mic now. The Yeti was just coming up too low no matter what I did. So let me know if I'm low, if I'm high. I'll try to adjust it. But yeah, we're gonna work on that. We're gonna see what we can do about getting the stream quality updated to 1080p as well. Without further ado, Gaz Mosh Shinobi, make sure to subscribe to his channel over at Mosh Shinobi. So today's topic is Blade Runner 1982. Gaz and I are just off the fresh screening. IMDb synopsis: a Blade Runner must pursue and terminate 4 replicants who stole a ship in space and have returned to Earth to find their creator. For those of you unfamiliar with the film, Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, Edward James Olmos. I totally forgot that he played Gaff in one Gas. I know they brought him back in 2049, but like I know Mac's a big Edwards James Olmos fan, as am I, and I totally forgot that. Rest in peace to Mr. Emmett Walsh, who plays Brian. I saw that he just passed away recently. Daryl Hannah plays Pris. William Sanderson, Sebastian. Joe Turkel plays Tyrell. He's the dude that's the bartender in The Shining. And I don't know if you know about this, Gaz, but there's a little bit of crossover with some of the leftover footage from The Shining that Ridley Scott contacted. Okay, so this is like a very
interesting,
difficult conversation to have, guys, because right off the rip, I'm going to tell you guys what's what. There's 7 versions of Blade Runner. 7. Yeah. So, and they're all different. So, I mean, that also affects plot elements. So, right off the rip, you're kind of at this like what is your favorite version of Blade Runner? Like me personally, like I like to choose the one that like I just think is the best to watch in my opinion. That's actually the US theatrical version, which has the narration in it, which is like similar to the old noir films, the old detective noir films, the black and white ones. Harrison Ford apparently didn't like the narration. I guess they had him come do it after the fact, and it was just like written by subpar writers and really had nothing to do with Ridley Scott. We can get into the production issues if you guys have the questions about that, of which there's many. But right off the bat, so what I have is I have the Blu-ray, Final Cut Blu-ray. Is one of my favorite Blu-rays in my collection, 5-disc collection. So it's got the Final Cut, which is what I watched last night. It has 2 Dangerous Days Making Blade Runner, if you really want to know the backstory of the, much like the Apocalypse Now documentary, guys. If you want to know the backstory of the production issues and you really want to hear it from Harrison and Ridley, then I advise that you watch that. Disc 3 contains the US theatrical cut, my favorite version, the international theatrical cut, and the director's cut. I'm not that much big of a fan of the director's cut. We can get into why. We can also get into the disagreement between Ridley and Harrison on the plot elements, because they have a rift there. And all that does is just add more controversy to the movie. Disc 4 is the enhancement archive. I think that's bonus features, and Disc 5 is the work print. Apparently, like the work print is a big deal too. That's kind of like an unfinished version of the whatever. I think they might have showed that to Phil K. Dick, and he was a fan of it. So yeah, there's just as you can see, most things that we cover are not going to have like almost 10 versions of them. So it just makes it more of a complicated conversation to have. And then of course the source material, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Mine is actually the rebranded Blade Runner cover, which is like after the fact with the production the still on the back. I like the version that is just like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, that just has nothing to do with Blade Runner, obviously, because the book is from 1968, and as you know, Blade Runner didn't come out till 1982. So quite a voyaged there a couple decades from novel to film.
An interesting point to pick up on that as well. I think there was 2 novel sequels based on the OG Blade Runner, loosely on the original source as well. Blade Runner 2, Blade Runner 3, possibly one was set on Mars, I believe.
I have Blade Runner 2 by, I believe it's by Kevin J. Anderson, who collaborates with Brian Herbert on those Dune sequels and Dune prequels. And Kevin J. Anderson's a really good, he's considered like the guy to make like novel from film adaptations. Like if you see like the Alien novel, I think he even did the Star Wars ones. Really anything that's like taking a film to a book, that's Kevin J. Anderson. He did some of the early Star Wars stuff too, like Tales of the Bounty Hunters. He's a good name in sci-fi. I like Kevin J. Anderson. Blade Runner 2 is a really good book, actually. That could be a whole other conversation if Mac and Gaz ever want to revisit. It has nothing to do with Phillip K. Dick, who's the original author of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and it's also like kind of a direct sequel to the movie, more so than it is a direct sequel to Do Androids Dream and Electric Sheep, because there is differences. I think there's that one channel, Gaz, that I don't know if the guy still does it, but it's called What's the Difference, where he'll take like a movie and a film and he'll break down, like not a movie and a film, a movie and a book, like anything, or like even I think he did The Crow, for example, like graphic novel to a movie, and then he'll break down like, hey, this is how the source material is, and he'll show you the differences. That's a really cool channel if you guys ever care to waste your time down some YouTube rabbit holes. Go check out What's the Difference. I don't know if he actually did Blade Runner or not, but I just bring it up in that. Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure if you're talking about the novel covers, Slipknot, but yeah. Anyway, so kind of difficult to jump in. I wish I had like read Do Androids Dream more recently, Gaz, because there's like honestly I can't even remember how they address like Deckard. Deckard's humanity, which is a central, a central theme in the actual movies, and that's what really gets changed from the work print version to the director's cut version to the final cut. They do one thing I like. Okay, if I had a second favorite version of the movie, it would be the final cut, because they do keep one voiceover in there, that very last one after Roy Batty's Tears in the Rain. Is that what you watched, guys? Did you watch the final cut? Yeah,
that's the one I watched.
So then you know what I'm talking about. After Roy Batty's Tears in the Rain monologue, Deckard kind of answers it with his own internal narration, which is cool. But anyway, 7 versions of the film, source material from the book, Phillip K. Dick. It's a lot with Blade Runner, so it's kind of difficult to where we want to jump in and start. I guess we'll just start with the movie. Yeah, dude, the artwork, and of course, going back to what Gaz asked me with The Crow, I would say Blade Runner has one of the greatest scores of all time with Vangelis. Like I'd say like cyberpunk wise, I'd say it's almost A Clockwork Orange and Blade Runner. Those are like the two cyberpunk electronic scores, which are.
I tell you what, man, I was gonna wait till later, but I'll jump right in there just on that. I was gonna make that point as well. The score, it still stands up, and what is interesting, synthwave and dark synth has become popular recently with movies and TV series set in the 80s, games as well, cyberpunk games, and all of them can trace the roots and inspirations from the OG Blade Runner, so absolutely 100, man.
Slipknot, how's my sound? Am I low or high? Just let me know, because this is a new microphone and like we said, a new camera, so we're constantly trying to adapt here at PXF. I guess we'll just jump in with plot elements, Gaz. Actually, I know the starting point. So what Slipknot asked me before, and I think I told you a similar thing with A Clockwork Orange, Gaz, which A Clockwork Orange is like my favorite sci-fi novel of all time. It's the only novel I've ever read twice, which is crazy, being how big of a Blade Runner fanboy is. You think I would have read this a couple more times. So I'm sorry, Phil. I'm sorry. I owe you a reread. Rest in peace, Phil K. Dick. I will reread it.
Yeah, definitely.
But how my opinion changed on Blade Runner, like over the years, like when I was first getting into this cyberpunk genre, I think what actually got me into this, and me and Gaz were talking about this, was the point and click Westwood game where you play a different Blade Runner by the name of Ray McCoy. And around that time, like I was like, hey, this game looks sick. I was getting like really big into the Blade Runner concept. I wanted to go watch the movie, but I was still at a very young age. And I want to say, I think I watched a VHS, and at this time, I think like all before really the DVDs started coming out, which I've had every media version of this movie. Obviously, I've owned it. When we, I'm talking about renting VHSs from the video store, which is an ancient concept. Me and Gaz will talk about.
It's well known.
So I think all that really was available was like the U.S. theatrical version. I want to say that's probably the first version I saw. Then maybe you guys had the international theatrical. But I don't even think the director's cut was even out. I think that was like 97.
It wasn't. We had the same. We had the US in the UK. We had the US theatrical version. I don't know about Europe if they maybe had the international version. I don't know.
Probably
but
did,
then the final cut come later because I know everybody got amped for that. I was like, oh man, the final cut's coming.
So if you're talking about this, yes and no. I feel like science fiction people have seen this though, because it's widely considered like the most influential sci-fi of all time.
I think he's on about Slipknot's on about the Headhunter movie.
Oh,
so we can come to that later.
Send that my way. Send that my way. If that's like a similar type of thing, I'm big into this android concept. Even the movie Split Second with Rutger Hauer. Have you seen that, guys?
Yeah.
That is sick. That's like a similar type of thing, which is very sick. So how my opinion changed on Blade Runner? Yeah, so I was getting into these action games like me and Gaz were talking about, and these cyberpunk games, the whole detective noir genre, because there's other PC games, I won't go down the list, that are similar, from this concept. Even like The Expanse, Gaz, we've always said that was very Blade Runner, at least when he was doing the whole detective thing. I don't know if that was season 2 or whatever. But yeah, it was, I simply missed the amount of detail in the shots, like just like Ridley Scott's like set pieces, much like Alien. Like there's so much detail in the background shots of Blade Runner, and a lot of that just slipped by me at a young age. So I was just like, it was way too slow paced for me at a young age until I went back, like Gaz said, and watched these other versions, watched the director's cut, watched the final cut, watched the work print. It slowly grew on me. I slowly started to notice more detail in each version of the film. And I always say that Blade Runner is one of those films that you pick up something new every time you watch it. Whether you're looking at shots in the background or just little details, dialogue, there's so much in there. And it was, at first it was way too slow paced for me. Now I watch it, and I watched it last night, and like I think it's way more fast paced as far as just the kind of in-between scenes with the kind of action sequences, which like Ridley kind of spaces out, per chapter, per act, and I feel like that's deliberate, Gaz. You can weigh in where you're at on the pacing,
I think I'm the same as you. I think the more you watch this, the more you notice. First time, obviously, we're both it's a young then. Probably didn't appreciate it as much, but it is one of those. I'll say this: I was thinking this was in my mind as you were talking, man. Like the original Conan is always on TV, and that's the one in fantasy. Everyone says, right, you've got to go and peep Conan, the OG. It's kind of the same for this in sci-fi and Blade Runner. It's one of those legendary movies people always bring up or recommend if you've never ever seen it, because some people still haven't, and it's always on TV as well. So I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously that's a good thing because it's one of those classics. Fire Pixie, yo, what up? We don't get it ticking off. You're here. Yay, we've escaped your wrath. No fire on us. Anyway, back on topic. Yeah, totally with you, because there's lots of little subtle nuances, particularly from the cinematography, the way it's been filmed. Every time you watch this, if you look in the background, there's so much detail. And I know it's not 100% the same as the Phillip K. Dick novel. I get that, but it still feels like a visual novel. And now, as you said about the action sequences, it's almost like, as you said, the pacing, the way those action scenes have been interjected, like it is deliberate. It gives you a bit of story, it gives you a bit of the plot. Then here's the action scene to stop people falling asleep, I guess, and then back into the plot elements.
Yeah. I never realized how much of a detective story it is until my last watch, because of Deckard's kind of investigation. What leads him to each, the slang word for replicants in the movie is skin job, and we really didn't set up a lot of the backdrop. We'll do that before we talk plot elements. It basically gives you a paragraph scrolling in the beginning of the movie, like Star Wars explaining to you Los Angeles 2019, definition of a replicant, the Tyrell Corporation created replicants, blah, blah, blah. As Gaz said, I mean, it's not exactly the same as Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and nor should it be, because I think they both stand, it kind of focuses more, maybe what they did was they took the focus on the Rick Deckard character, who is actually, I think, is his name even Rick Deckard I think it's, I think his name might be a little bit different in the book, but, maybe they come to the same.
I think it is actually. I think it's the
but
same.
Either way, they just focused on his character. So like me and Gaz says, like even with Dune, like for example, right? Like with a lot of these books and a lot of these things that become either live action series or movies, sometimes there's almost 50, 100 characters in these books. So it's a little bit, when you need to hire an actor and put them on camera and everything is shot based and every character is dialogue based, sometimes it could get a little too convoluted if you have like 100 characters with one line in a movie. It just doesn't make sense, right? So like Gaz said, a way of narrowing that scope is kind of centering the story more on Rick Deckard and just making it about the Blade Runner, making it about him taking down those rogue replicants. So as we explained, replicants are synthetic bioengineered humans that are used for off-world, they basically have these off-world colonies, mining colonies, where it's authorized to use replicants there, but they're not allowed to be used on Earth. A lot of it is just because the regulation is completely unattainable, right? Tyrell basically builds these upper-level replicants that the line between human and them is dimming, right? And he basically tells them, like, well, what the government regulation or the built-in failsafe is that they have a 4-year lifespan, you know what I mean? So, like, what's the worst that could go wrong, right? If they escape the off-world colonies and they come back to Earth, they're obviously, going to be causing some sort of problem, and then, they have the 4-year lifespan built in. So that's pretty much what a lot of the story focuses on. And then essentially, Deckard is essentially a detective that has quit, but one of the other high-ranking Blade Runners gets injured on this mission. Dave Holden, he gets shot and hospitalized. That kind of takes him out of the thing. So that would leads the chief Bryant to try to re-recruit Deckard again. Like, one of the first things, I know you've probably seen the film enough time, Gaz, to catch this, but one of the first things Deckard says to Brian is like, give it to Holden, he's good. And Brian's like, I gave it to Holden, he's plugged into a hospital machine, breathing machine, So like, as in like, dude, I gave it to my best guy and he got, essentially almost, almost killed on the job, So it kind of sets up the event.
Yeah, it really does, and it I feel that's to introduce the threat that the replicants possess as well. I love the way, what gets me every time I see it as well, the way it opens up. That shot you see of LA in the future, which still stands up to this day as well, this beautiful cyberpunk city, which has been pretty much the benchmark for that whole genre ever since, whatever it's films, games. And that meeting with Deckard, language has escaped me.
I'm sure it's a cultural thing. I don't think it's a British director. We'll let you slide.
From my region as well. From our east,
exactly.
North. Deckard. Should do Hollywood. I should do a Hollywood generic British voice. Well, what up, old boy? It's pronounced Richard Deckard.
That's the only thing this is missing, huh? For a British director, there's no like jolly good old boy character that where's the British accent at Blade Runner? I guess it's Los Angeles, but they said it's an amalgamation of all. And we could get into Gaff's dialect as well. I did a little research on that.
But isn't that such a good scene though? That meeting that Deckard has with Brian. I think Leon is present as well. And this is just after. Spoiler alert: we see what happens when one of the replicants is interviewed, and the whole atmosphere in the way it's shot. It's like that line when Deckard Deckard leaves the office. He's like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with this. I quit. And then, Brian pretty much says, really, you have no choice. Deckard says himself, implies that. The whole way that's set up, I feel is orchestrated excellently, man. Just the way it hooks in the listener. It's something I feel that's forgotten.
God, Brian is so good in this movie. God, I think he only has, is it 2 or 3 scenes? He has the scene at the station. He comes after Deckard takes out Zora, and then like maybe somewhere near the end or something like that. Yeah. Like after Roy or something. So yeah, I think that the actor only has 3, and he's like, damn, he is like the perfect like detective captain, like noir. Like I feel he brings that like 50s noir element. Like another thing I want to say, like when I first watched this at a young age, Slipknot was asking us how our view changed. Well, I didn't know anything about the noir genre the first time I saw Blade Runner, so I had no appreciation of Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart, the Maltese Falcon, the French New Wave, and then obviously Blade Runner, they call it neo-noir, like a sci-fi sequel to that. But yeah, so like having that appreciation of the old detective 50s, 60s noir movies, and then I think that's something like that will really help your appreciation of Blade Runner, because when you first come into it, you're like, okay, it's like this dusty, grimy, like kind of like sci-fi, dystopian like detective thing. But what gets lost in a lot of that is like that old 50s, 60s influence of the the noir movies, and there's nothing really like that I know of course, other than Blade Runner, anything that captures it in any kind of meaningful, impactful way. I was just gonna say, like that movie Renaissance, guys, that's black and white with Daniel Craig. I'd say that's maybe the closest thing since Blade Runner. That's just in my estimation.
There's as you mentioned earlier, The Expanse, and I haven't watched it since season 3, folks. I believe it went on to maybe have 5 or 6 seasons, and it's finished now. But the early seasons, one of the characters definitely based on Deckard. Had his whole kind of detective angle in there. It was kind of like a cyberpunk kind of detective story, that noir, whilst there was the regular political kind of action thriller, I guess, going on in The Expanse. And it was definitely drawn from Blade Runner. It's the closest I've seen to that. There's been the odd random episode on some sci-fi series, but it's like a one-off, but nothing, as you rightly pointed out, on that same scale. I know there'd be some people out there say, oh, you've got Spider-Man Noir, I think, but it's very different to the cyberpunk Blade Runner aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm interested in that guy, especially since I heard that they just signed Nicolas Cage, who, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of. I don't really know anything about Spider-Man Noir, but it sounds like a cool concept. But again, like I said, nothing on the... so what Gaz was saying about the cyberpunk atmosphere, environment, backdrop of Blade Runner, so they showed Philip, and Gaz was saying, different from the book, blah, blah, blah. Well, they actually showed it to Philip K. Dick, concept art and the work print, and he said it was exactly how he imagined it. So, as Gaz said, although it's 2 different projects, you have the actual author of the novel seeing because let me preface this with Phil K. Dick is not the Hollywood guy. He was very mistrusting of Hollywood, as were a lot of original authors, because even was that dude who was it Conrad who wrote Catcher in the Rye. Like they made that Catcher in the Rye movie, or maybe it wasn't even Catcher in the Rye. One of his earlier books, they made a movie of it, and that guy thought it was so bad that he pulled his entire repertoire out of Hollywood forever and never. So it's a very common thing with like book authors being like, hey, I don't want the Hollywood treatment for my crap. Sorry, like I don't want to roll the dice and see what kind of piece of crap you guys take my work with and butcher it. So we really can't downtrod Phil K. Dick for feeling that way, because you have a whole host of authors from the 50s and 60s and 70s that probably thought the same thing as him. There were quite a bit of things that fell apart. I know Ridley was looking for a project because his older brother had passed away. I'm a big fan of the Scott brothers, so I don't care to go any further into deeper that to discuss that. But I understand that Ridley was looking for a project to take his mind off of family trauma. So that's ultimately how he came to Blade Runner. But there was other other directors in discussion. one thing that I have to bring up later, Gaz, when we talk production, are some of the other actors who are considered for Deckard, and you guys are going to absolutely lose it when you when you hear some of the names that they, that's just when my boy Minty Comedic Arts, check out his channel when he does like the top 10 facts. A lot of times he'll do like alternate castings for like the lead role, and like oftentimes you hear some names where you're just like, I could never picture that guy in this just any movie. So one thing I wanted to bring up, Gaz knows I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. I didn't know this. He was apparently interested in filming the novel, but he never optioned it.
Whoa.
And of course the script is Hampton Fancher, and I believe that's the version of the script. But to make a long story long, guys, there was rewrites. There was many rewrites. Phil was unhappy with some of the early versions of the rewrites, and then I think they got him that Fancher script. I think that was the last one they got into his hands, and he kind of approved that one. But my point I'm getting to, you guys, it wasn't something where they just whipped up a perfect script right away and they just passed it to the original author, and he was like, oh yeah, that's perfect, let's go to set. Like, they passed him a few, and he's like, these are trash, I don't like any of these. He pressed them. And like Gaz was saying, I like that because I feel, in my opinion, because of Phil pressing them, he put the pressure on him to, refine it, as Gaz was saying, and come back to him like, hey, listen, I wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. You're not going to get, we're back to The Crow where they told James O'Barr, hey, it would be a really good idea if Michael Jackson made a musical. And he's like, did you read my graphic novel? I made a thing where a crow resurrected a guy from the dead, and he came back with a katana blade and sliced street thugs to smithereens. And you want to have Michael Jackson dancing around with a katana killing people, saying it's like, one point that I wanted to get across in this review is oftentimes you have like the director's view of the film and you have the studio's view of the film, and it's not often the same thing. And the two visions are not often always the same. And in Blade Runner, you had very, very heavy friction between Ridley Scott and the studio, and there was constant fighting about the financing. I could go into that later and how it affected production. But that, just all the backdrop of like a movie this good, you don't really expect to hear so much struggle on the back end. You think like, oh, Blade Runner, that's a really good movie. I'm sure production went really smooth. And I guarantee you, if you watch that documentary, it was anything like, you'll hear Ridley Scott talking about how bad it was. You'll hear Harrison Ford talking about how bad it was. That's the director and the main star. Who else do you need to hear it from?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we tend to look at Star Wars as well for its cultural impact, even Lord of the Rings to a point. And I know this would be a whole other topic for where Star Wars is now. It certainly isn't in a good place either. But at College Man, we looked at Philip K. Dick. Blade Runner was cited often, so it's the film and Philip K. Dick's work from a literary standpoint and filmmaking as well is always one of those cited literary sources and movie for kind of being one of the masterpieces in filmmaking. I know some people may have a different opinion, but I think it is definitely up there as one of the all-time pieces. It was always coming up, man, in college, right? So
yeah, my point to get, but to segue off Gaz's point or piggyback off it, would be the production set. I don't, other than maybe Alien 1 with the H.R. Geiger kind of hand building the eggs and the set pieces, I don't know that there's a better, the Bradbury building downtown in LA, that's that building in the Act 3 Gaz. Deckard's apartment is supposedly, I think that's like one of the Frank Lloydian Wright houses, like a 1920s house in LA, so it's why it has all the geometric architecture, symmetric architecture. I mean, the best thing is, guys, just go on the Wikipedia page. We don't really ever say that often, but there's so much detail on Blade Runner. That's one that you could watch the documentary or read up on post stuff. There's for us to cover every detail would be nearly impossible, as Gaz said. But I would say set detail, I don't know if there is better set detail. One final point, we'll go back into plot elements. The futuristic mishmash of all the European accents. I feel like this concept, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gaz, I don't know if you caught this in A Clockwork Orange, again, another British director, Stanley Kubrick, and British lead, Malcolm McDowell, obviously a British production. When they used the Russian slang words in Clockwork Orange, it was supposed to give you that thing that all of the European languages are melting into each other. So even though they're out in England, they use Russian slang words. Like they call girls devotchkas and whatever.
Yeah.
Similar thing to what Gaff's character was doing in Blade Runner. He's obviously Edward James Olmos, obviously a Hispanic actor, but you saw all those Japanese characters and the Asian influence of Los Angeles all over the place. So
yeah.
Gaff's language, he tries to use that Blade Runner LA street language of a mixture of like English, Spanish. Apparently, I just read up some of the words were Hungarian, and I think there might be some Japanese in there as well. This is one of the most dialectically advanced things I've ever seen in a movie. You know what I mean? Where they've got all and again, you know, what's his name? The Clockwork Orange writer. Why is that guy's name slipping my? I'm gonna kill myself. I can't remember the author, but that since that guy used the different European slang within the English, this is one of the most creative things I've ever seen as far as like playing with language, and you know, and that's a detail that's like it's never really even explained to you. It's just in the movie, you know. So,
Anthony Burgess.
Cool. Yes, Burgess. So so when he uses the Russian slang in Clockwork Orange, which obviously becomes a movie later on.
To make a recent example, I guess the only other time I've seen this, as far as I know, if anybody knows of any films or series where they have done this kind of thing before, please let us know. We can take a look at it. Yeah, that's it, Fire Pixie. Coming back to The Expanse again, this is, in my recent experience, yeah, daft Disney. Don't get us started. Don't get us started. That would be a raw show in itself. When the spoilers alert for anyone who hasn't seen The Expanse, but essentially there's like three groups of humans. There's those who live on Earth, there's the humans that live on Mars, and then there's those that live out in the belt, an asteroid belt, kind of minus. And the interesting thing, Ross, is those that live out in the belt have started to develop their own separate language from the rest of us with their own slang, very different accent, and they really do painstakingly try and show this, and even go from, like, I guess, standard English then into the Belters language, which I've forgotten what it's called. So when I watched this back last night, Blade Runner, that got me thinking of The Expanse and this, and I thought that gives us, one, it shows you the vision and for where language is going, because English is kind of become like Latin, the common language, and it's constantly evolving, changing itself as it always has done, taking bits from everything. So that was a very interesting vision that they had way back then, and it really did make Gaff stand out and be quite unique, because he had that different accent, that different way of talking. It made your ears perk up, added to a bit of mystery, because you don't really see him much in the movie at all, actually. But he does have this mysterious kind of aura about him, especially at the end, as we'll get to.
Yeah, I have a lot more to say on Gaff too, because I feel like the way they introduce him, he ultimately proves is not how he's presented. You know, like he sort of his character arc, he kind of takes a different direction that you wouldn't expect him to. But you can see when they go into Leon's apartment together. Him and Deckard are working together, doing the investigation together, so you can see that they're like partners, you know. And I feel like it shows that Gaff likes Deckard more than is presented at the end of the movie, as Gaz was saying. We could get into that when we come to it. So yeah, as Gaz said, Deckard, when he flies around the man. Sorry guys, I gotta search something real quick.
It's I'm just going to respond to Slipknot real quick while
the spinner. I forgot what the car was called. When Deckard's flying around the spinner, or his regular car, you know, the street car, because the spinners are. I'm sure even if you guys have seen the Blade Runner trailer, you know what the spinner looks like. There's a lot of like models and toys of it out now. It's a kind of a flying police car. He keeps watching the interview, the Voight-Kampff interview that Gaz was talking about, Holden pressing Leon with the Voight-Kampff interview, which is cool. Like, I honestly, after this last view, I really like the way they showed Deckard's, like, investigation, because they showed him, you know, he's continually watching the tape. Even though they depict him as a total alcoholic in the movie, you know, you can see that his investigative measures are pretty sound as far as, like, picking out the details, you know?
Did you, I've got to ask you this, man. And dare I say this? Yes, I dare. Did you kind of get just a little bit of a slight Dirty Harry vibe as well with this? Just only slightly. I know he's not like outlandish going off, using his Magnum down street alleyways and stuff. But it kind of just a little bit of the tone, griminess.
Yeah, so Dirty Harry's 71. It's 10 years earlier. So, and I gotta assume, like, you have to assume that Ford and Scott are some sort of Western films. I know Dirty Harry isn't exactly a genre Western, but it's Clint Eastwood. So, I mean, if you see the guy in any role, you're like, okay, his entire repertoire is Westerns, And I think that's something we should cover down the line, guys. Dirty Harry, especially with the Zodiac connection, and Dirty Harry falls into my Vigilante series. So we're for sure going to be talking about Rutger, probably in Act 3 Pixie. He's probably one of my favorite actors of all time. I have a ton to say about him, especially in this movie.
Good person as well.
What do we got? Of course the AD. Yeah, definitely that fits into the Dredd stuff. Yeah, I know. Gaz is a big Dredd head. I'm a big Dredd head. Batman versus Dredd, I imagine, would go pretty badly. I imagine Dredd would beat the bag out of Batman, but it is what it is. It's the future. I am the law. I like the whole scale thing. How he finds the scale in the sink or whatever that is, the bathtub, and then of course Gaff leaves the origami guys at like all the replicants' houses at his call sign. So I think, if I'm not okay, so Bryant sends Deckard to Tyrell Corporation to run the VK on Rachel. Rachel's the new Nexus 6 model. Typically, I think Deckard told Tyrell it takes 20, 30 questions to get the iris response, the emotional iris response from a replicant to determine their status, replicant or human. And with Rachel, it took over 100 questions because Tyrell inserted the memories of his niece into her. We could all argue the complications of that, or the efficacy of that, whether that's ethical or not, which it doesn't seem to be. Tyrell's obviously a psychopath, regardless of an extremely high IQ one. He makes some extremely debatable moral decisions, just definitely like a god complex, a god complex character, I would say. So Sean Young plays Rachel. I think she has an excellent performance. I would argue maybe second best in the movie outside of Ford and Hauer. As Deckard does his investigation, ultimately I think he tracks down Zora first, right? Of the group, it's Batty, it's Leon, Batty, Zora, and Pris are the four.
Yeah.
So he tracks down Zora first through the scale. He tracks him to like the genetic animal black market. He brings it to the fish lady first, and she's like, yeah, it's not a fish scale, it's a snake. So he goes to the snake guy. He presses that guy, who gives him the name of the bar owner, right? Is it Taffy Lewis? One thing I just saw in the notes, Gaz, was that apparently that Taffy Lewis scene was shot in one take. Which that Taffy Lewis guy apparently killed it. They said Scott almost never does a single take. They said that he's like a double-digit take minimum. So that was like, apparently that dude just killed the scene or whatever, which is impressive. That leads Deckard to like Zora's back room, where he pretends to be the guy investigating the mistreating employees thing. Obviously, like hilarious decoy voice, and obviously is not going to work, but just some great interactions in the dialogue there. I really won't go too deep into it. Zora obviously gets the idea he's a cop from the questioning, and she obviously tries to run, which you can kind of say, well, tries to choke him out with his tie actually and kill him first and then runs. Sick scene. And just also the whole setup, I just want to go a little the whole open air markets is like when Deckard's going through the open air with the ostriches, just tons of detail in the crammed LA streets of the open air fish markets.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning earlier, especially when it opens up and then it goes through the streets. It's just like I was saying, every time you watch it, you always spot something new because there's details in the background. For example, there's something I'm going to mention in when we break down some fun facts later that I noticed, and I was like, oh man, I forgot about that. And then there was something else. It's the way the the amount of detail that has gone into really recreating this world.
Yeah.
Man, it's like you said, Ross. We could probably do a series of shows just breaking that side down for anything else, which is why, as I was saying, this is on college syllabuses the world over from a literary and filmmaking standpoint, because there's just so much there, man.
Yeah, and I think that's what nailed Phil for like the post-apocalyptic 2019 Los Angeles and the street class, the lower class street people in the street markets, and the higher uppers are in the high rises, looking down on the low class people. I think all of and then as Gaz said, the cyberpunk city with the Tyrell Corporation pyramids and the whole skyline with the flames. I think that's what got Phil. He's he watched it. He was like, oh yeah, of course this is right. It's, you have to be an idiot to look at that stuff and think that it's not right. Yeah. So Bryant shows up. He tells Deckard like what a good job he's doing and how many more skin jobs left. Blah blah blah. Deckard buys a bottle. I believe at some point he's like, you got 4 left, and Deckard's like, I got 3 left, and he's like, no, Rachel, the one that you ran the VK at Tyrell, she escaped. Obviously, like, that's kind of Deckard's love interest in the movie, so he doesn't want to kill her, even though she questions her own humanity because her creator didn't tell her that she's he essentially implanted, like, if we're doing a bad job of explaining this, guys, it's very, very, very complicated. First of all, I've seen this film 100 times. I can't explain the plot to you, so that just, you really have to watch yourself, and on top of that, you got to watch different versions. But he implanted his niece's memories into Rachel and didn't tell her that she's a replicant. So the Nexus 6s are the highest level, and then sort of like we'll come to the development of Rachel. Tyrell keeps saying she's experimental. What does that mean? Does that mean she's a Nexus 7? And then the whole question about that is like, a question she asked Deckard. Another main theme, Tyrell tells Deckard more human than human is our motto. So when a Nexus becomes to Nexus 7 and the Void K machine isn't, Deckard already had trouble identifying her now with the VK. If Tyrell keeps making models and they get to Nexus 7, what happens if the VK can't spot the replicants anymore? That's essentially what Rachel was saying to Deckard. Have you ever retired a human by mistake? How would you know? How are you going to know the difference? That's the whole theme of this movie, Slipknot. If the replicants keep evolving, what's the line between them and us? That is the question of humanity is one of the central themes of this movie. There's others, but
and as we talk on some, I guess, post-plot elements, there's so many subtle references, Easter eggs littered in this movie. Yes, I'm referring to the whole Deckard a replicant, is he or not kind of thing, which is still ongoing now.
Alters on which version too.
Yeah. Something else just said, did you guys notice the male replicants have surnames? Roy, Batty, Leon, Kowalski, but the female replicants just have first names, Pris, or Rachel. You know what, man? I hadn't until you just actually said that. Really, so very good point.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Like Leon Kolowski, like it sounds like he's supposed to be like, that sounds like more like a Jewish type of name, and what I'm saying, I don't know what the significance of any of that is, but it's definitely interesting. So Deckard sees Rachel in the crowd after Zora, but he loses her, and then he gets attacked by Leon. So Leon, I think Leon was obviously like had a relationship with Zora, right? Because the way Deckard found her was in the photographs at Leon's house. Zora was in the bed, so she was staying with Leon. So that, what I mean? So that's like, it doesn't really explain it much because it's Blade Runner, but I think that's what you're supposed to surmise from it. So, but that machine Deckard uses with the hard copies, how it can like change the angle of the pictures and zoom, and basically extract a different angle out of a one angle pic. Like I think that's one, even though it's not necessarily a fast-paced scenes, I think that's like one of the better scenes in the movie as far as like how the Blade Runners, do their investigation. So he gets attacked by Leon, who we've already seen Leon shoot Holden in the first scene of the movie. So like Gaz said, you can see that they have no problem doing this. Now, all of this is because Roy led them out of the outer lying colonies to get back to Tyrell Corporation to figure out if there's a cure for their built-in 4-year retirement inception date. So so basically what happened is Leon and I think maybe some of the others, they went back to Tyrell and like applied for jobs to try to get hired there to infiltrate. So that's where this is all coming from, guys. So Leon tries to kill Deckard. He loses his gun in the fight, and Rachel saves him, which is definitely one of the sicker fight scenes in the movie, even in that in the last one. Pretty violent.
Yeah, very gritty. It shows you that the again, getting back to the danger that the replicants present as well. I feel it's balanced nicely. You have the mystery, you have the plot. You know, there's something like this hidden layers, but then when the action happens as well, you're still showing that this is still a very gritty, cyberpunk, futuristic world.
Yeah, the durability of the replicants, guys, should be highlighted because they're not like humans. They feel essentially no pain, much less. When Roy and Leon go to the eye creator, the replicant dude, the geneticist who makes the eyes, he has them like in a sub-zero liquid. Like Leon like sticks his hand in that and scoops out the eyes, and he's like putting them on the guy's shoulders. Like a lot of the stuff they do, they're showing you like they could stick their hand into something boiling hot to us or freezing cold and have zero effect. It's not gonna affect them the way it would affect a human, you know.
A guy that can put his head through a wall more or less, even if it's wood, and then talk to you and politely imply, okay, I will give you a minute, start whatever, sir. Okay, I'm coming now. That's someone that says to me, I don't want to do any training with you whatsoever. I'm getting out of there. You know, but we'll come to that later. Definitely a classic scene for sure.
Look at this. That photo enhancement machine scene was incredible. Someone even made a 10-hour version of it on YouTube. I mean, YouTube's a crazy place nowadays. That doesn't surprise me. But yeah, I like that scene a lot too. The video game is cool, as me and Gaz were saying, because you get to use some of the Blade Runner tactics like that, so you actually get to like use it for yourself, which is cool.
Even that had multiple endings as well.
Yep, a lot of good details in there. So they pretty much bounce out of there. They go back to Deckard's house, and she says like, if I escape the city and go up north, would you come after me? And Deckard said like, no, but like the police will send someone, you know, because they're going to try to retire the replicants by any means necessary. So he says that he wouldn't follow her because she saved him, so which is cool on Deckard, you know. Go ahead, guys.
I'll wait. I was going to wait for fun facts on this, but seeing as you mentioned it with, is it Leon who leaves his origami sign there at the end, which gets, oh, I'm opening up those can of worms already. It gets into the hole as Deckard.
What do you mean when Gaff leaves it at Deckard's place? The last scene? Yeah, I mean, we should save that.
Yeah,
to the
we'll
end,
save
you
that.
know,
I'll be hitting myself.
Whether there's any significance, I mean, you could read up on what the symbolism it is. It kind of goes both ways because it could, you know. So we'll just say, so on that point, so Fancher, the writer, he liked the ambiguity of like, you don't know if Deckard's a replicant or not. I think that's what makes the film so great. Ford preferred Deckard as a human, you know what I mean, facing human struggles and the question of, you know, the constant threat of retiring a human by mistake, which is, you know, Blade Runner's job. And Ridley liked Deckard as like one of the higher level, like, you know, like a Rachel, like a Nexus 7. Like he doesn't, much like Rachel didn't know she was a replicant until someone told her, you know. That's kind of Ridley's take on Deckard. Like he doesn't even know he's this high level capable. And I feel like if you guys care for us to cover the Blade Runner sequel 2049, we can cover that. I feel like that's why with Gosling's character in that, the reason why they went with a replicant Blade Runner is to hammer that point down, you know, like in Ford's version, he's a human Blade Runner, and in 2049, Gosling is a replicant Blade Runner. Again, this is a Blade Runner 1 review, so if you guys want 2049, just let us know. We'll knock that out for you. Again, I love that director, Denis Villeneuve. He did Dune 1 and 2. That guy's a genius. I don't think Blade Runner 2049 is any Blade Runner 1942, but it's an excellent movie. It's excellent sci-fi. Great directing. As far as world building, 1982, is that what I said?
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know they did a World War II version.
That's a classic, yeah, dude. That's freaking. That's BJ.
Look at that.
That's BJ Blazkowicz mowing as a replicant mowing him down the side. Anyway, this is the part of the show that gets off the rails, folks. So ultimately, Pris meets JF Sebastian in the streets. And JF is one of the bioengineers for Tyrell. He does like the genetic engineering. He kind of has like these little experiment midget friends that he makes in his, I think that's the Bradbury building. So he essentially lives in this gothic apartment, I don't know, hotel, I don't know what you call, I don't even know what to call that place, guys. But he lives in this kind of empty building by himself up in the top floors. So he brings Pris up there. Pris is obviously in a relationship with Roy, Rutger Hauer, that Fire Pixie mentioned earlier. So it's only a matter of time that Roy shows up at Sebastian's house, and he's the adversary of Deckard. He's the leader of the Replicants. He's the villain in this movie. You have to decide, with yourself whether or not you side with Roy as far as what he's doing in this movie. Is what Roy doing really wrong? Because Tyrell is pretty much presented to you as pure evil. He's a corporate mogul that is profiting off the replicant slave labor. You know what I mean? So it's like the Blade Runner's all about your lines. Which line do you cross and where do you fall in the the ethical morality of these characters.
Well, the good thing is as well, although Roy could fall into a villain and a role somewhat, certainly not as strong as other villains. In the sense of a clear-cut villain, because maybe not even arguably as strong as Tyrell, because Tyrell's presented to you as a piece of crap. So. Look, I'm not making any mistakes here. That Roy has obviously done some questionable stuff. It's referred to before he came to Earth, how he's escaped, how many people the replicants have killed. He's
some sort of soldier, though. He's a military model. You can argue that he's programmed to do that, just to devil's advocate.
But when you get to, and we'll get to this later, one of the classic all-time monologues in film history ever has been quoted in so many forms of music.
That Howard wrote.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. We'll come to that. It instills this sense of sympathy for Roy's character as well.
Yep.
Even the Joker movie, where we know who the Joker becomes, etc., but it's still what you saw the Joker go through. How he was shunned by society. So when they can do that from a storytelling standpoint, when it's not a clear-cut good character, if you like, but you can still feel that bit of sympathy for them, that is good writing, man.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I don't know. Like, obviously, the replicants are going around killing all the employees of Tyrell that they come across. Yeah. You could also argue that is it ethical for Tyrell to bioengineer the synths at all? You know what I mean? Because then you gotta sleep in the bed that you make. So you guys are the ones creating them. It's kind of on you. So I don't know as far as him killing the eyeball guy. So essentially, what Roy wants to do is he wants to use Sebastian to get him into Tyrell's penthouse there. You know what I mean? So he can get access to him to question him on the inception date of the 4-year retirement and all that nature. So one thing that hit home last time I watched it, Gaz, was that disease that Sebastian has is speeding up his aging, so he's way younger than he looks. It kind of gives him the reason why they have him is because it gives you a human character that can relate to the replicants. Much like they have a built-in shortened lifespan. Sebastian is a regular human that has disease that makes him sympathize with them because of his own sped up aging process.
Yeah, it's something syndrome, isn't it? Now I'm trying to remember it because that whole scene is really well done because it's like as Roy says, we've got a lot in common. I'm probably going to absolutely butcher this. Macrothrombocytopenia.
Just says it's a premature aging disorder.
That'll do. I've probably just given the total wrong definition as well. It'll probably be something totally different. I just quickly had a Google on it to help us out.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I thought I like the Sebastian character a lot. I thought that dude had a really good performance. It's just, oops, so dirty here. Let me get back to Blade Runner. I'm totally I'm useless today, guys. This is like usually something I discuss every day, and now it's just
it's just the amount of conversations you had in this.
Yeah, it's just been a while since I've seen it, so
the Voight can have test to detect if they're a replicant or not fire.
Yeah. So William Sanderson is the actor who played Sebastian. It's called the VK. They call it VK for short, but Voight Kampf. And there's different Voight Kampfs throughout history. Other people have tried to look up like what it means. That's the big thing of Blade Runner. Everybody's trying to deconstruct the meaning of every detail. Like much like Clockwork Orange, I don't know that there is like the technique that they give Alex in Clockwork is called like Ludovico's technique. Like people do the same thing trying to look up. Like a lot of times I think like the writers and directors just like pick these names because they sound good. I mean, maybe there's like a meaning to them. In that case, I mean the writer. But like if Stanley Kubrick's passed away and he didn't tell anybody, then how are you going to figure out what he meant? You know what I mean? It's not really easy to do. So one thing I missed though, Gaz, was like, how did Deckard come across, and again, seen the film thousands of times, guys, sorry, I don't know this, I could just Google it. How did Deckard find Sebastian? Because I saw him going in the like lobby and coming up the elevator, but I don't know how he identified that Pris would be there, or maybe it's because, I think it's because after, okay, hold on, let me back up. Sebastian has a one-on-one chess game with Tyrell.
Yeah.
And this shows you how smart Sebastian is, how high IQ, because Tyrell's supposed to be this literal genius that created the replicant synthetic bioengineered brain, right? Not an easy task, right? That was 1982. It's 2024. We're still nowhere near that in modern human evolution, at least that we know of. We could get into conspiracies, but popular common knowledge, we're nowhere near that. So Sebastian goes up in the elevator. Tyrell's like in bed getting ready to go to sleep. He tells him the chess moves. It's like 2 or 3 moves, and he checkmates him. And Tyrell is so impressed that he got checkmated by his lower employee, right? Because all Sebastian does is genetics. He doesn't do the actual brain like Tyrell does. He's like, this is crazy. He's so surprised. He's like, why don't you come up here and talk to me about this? So he grants him access to the penthouse. Obviously, it's a trap. When Sebastian shows up, Roy Batty's with him. That's something that we didn't set up, guys. So
I forgot about that. Because that's when Roy's asking him pretty much, you're our creator, you're our maker. Can you extend our lifespan? And that's when Tyrell informs him, no, we've tried and it didn't go well.
Built in. And you know what's so interesting about this conversation, right? The government regulation is that they required Tyrell to have the 4-year lifespan regardless, because they knew that Tyrell wouldn't be controlling him. So when Roy asks him all those workarounds, how do you think Tyrell knows? He's like, oh no, we tried it. Well, why did Tyrell try all those fixes for the 4-year lifespan if it's totally illegal and he's not supposed to be working on it anyway? It directly shows you how evil Tyrell is. Even though they required him to have the 4-year lifespan, his company still tried all those ways to make the replicants have a full lifespan, which they ultimately did find a workaround. It'll be explained later,
Yeah. Very, very good point.
Why does he know that, right? He shouldn't know that at all. They shouldn't even be researching that. It's an interesting point,
Mm.
So the line from Roy is, "I want more life, Father." So, and then I felt like this also showed Roy's IQ, because they said he's the military model, but he also has this deep understanding of genetics and DNAs and amino acids and genetic coding, because all those specific questions he asked him that Gaz just said, how does Roy even know that? He's been trying to find the cure, So like he shouldn't have that deep understanding of the creation of the bioengineering,
I think it shows you from his, because he's a combat model, that he can adapt and strategize very efficiently.
Exactly.
Notice things he notices through his interactions and learn from them extremely quickly.
Detail-oriented. Even a complex topic like geneticism, he's even to break it down and compartmentalize and understand it. Like Gaz said, he should just be this low-level meathead military model that's combat efficient, yet he applies himself to other topics, like Gaz says, and digests them almost instantly. He's going back and forth with Tyrell, who's the mogul creator of the corporation that spent his entire lifetime researching it, and yet Roy is able to go back and forth with him on the topic in only a 2 or 3 year lifespan. You know,
if I remembered correctly,
he shouldn't be conversational.
If I remembered correctly, just before we get to that scene where Roy meets Tyrell, where they're going up in the elevator, and Sebastian, you know, is going back and forth with Tyrell with the chess moves. Isn't it Roy that comes up with the next chess move to defeat Tyrell?
Oh my God, I think you're right. Oh my God, I think you're right. I think he whispers something to him, which that shows you Roy is like a super genius for a freaking replicant. You know what I mean?
Just remember that because that's what gets them up there. Because then Tyrell says, "Right, I've got to talk to you. How did you?" And I'm sure it's like Roy just subtly in the elevator.
You know what? I think I missed that too. I'm glad Gaz pointed that out. Guys, if you noticed that scene, weigh in on it. That's Blade Runner, a very 2-second scene that you could easily miss if you blink, alters the whole plot for the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? Because again, if Sebastian doesn't beat Tyrell in the chess game, he doesn't invite them upstairs. Roy doesn't get to encounter Tyrell and question him. You know, so it all rests on that scene. So, I mean, I'm just going to get into it, Gaz. I mean, this is PXF. So Roy gets in there. He questions him about 3 or 4 different topics. Can you come up with a regenerative protein? Can you come up with a blocker? Can you come up with this? Tyrell gives him, hey, we've tried every single one of them. None of them work. He doesn't explain to him about Rachel, though, how it's already coded into her. So that's one thing that he leaves out. So he doesn't tell Roy that I already have other ones that I've, you know, once they're already built, if, you know, you can make it, you know, unlimited, or at least without the, you know, give them a natural decomposition without the 4-year inception date. So after Roy Batty, so this is what you wanted, Fire Pixie. This is what you want. Roy Batty, the greatest vision of all time, the greatest villain of all time. He grabs Tyrell by his face, kisses him, and then mashes his face in and pops his eyeballs out, which is what Leon almost did to Deckard in the earlier scenes. But this time you actually get to see it. So a little bit more satisfying with Tyrell because you know that he's scum. So that's one kill I can't really disagree with, even though Roy was killing humans. That one I'm like, okay, well Tyrell, like, he just gave you multiple ways around it right there. As the scientist, you didn't even have to tell him no because you're so arrogant. You could have told him, like, hey, let's go down to the lab. Let's try it. Then you could have had one of your scientists giving him a lethal injection, and Roy wouldn't have known the difference, right? But because Tyrell is so, like, egomaniac, he's like, he has to tell him, like, oh, no, we tried it. It doesn't work. Idiot. Gets his face mashed. One death that they don't have on camera, I believe, is I was wondering what Sebastian's fate was, and I think this answers my question from earlier, guys. Sebastian sees him crush Tyrell's face and tries to run away, and Roy is like, sorry, Sebastian, and they later report that, like, Sebastian's found dead. So, like, Roy obviously killed Sebastian, like, in the elevator or something on the way down because he was a witness to the Tyrell murder. So I think Deckard must have got radioed that Sebastian's body was found, so he must have pulled Sebastian's address and went there. You know, that's my guess.
Something. If anyone knows,
unless I missed something.
If anyone knows on this, please weigh in. Isn't there next scene where Deckard is in his car and something comes up in the computer and something comes up on the computer, and that's
maybe he pulls up Sebastian's face and it has his stats with his address.
It's something. I'm sure it is.
The problem is Deckard does so much, like when he's driving between eating noodles and listening to those like documentary footage and watching the notes on the screen. It's like those are just driving scenes. So like I said, if you're getting a drink or going to the bathroom real quick, you could easily miss a detail like that and then be like, oh crap, now Deckard's at the Bradbury house. So that, you know, as I said about the pacing, like, I used to think this was a super slow-paced movie. Once Gaz said, once you start absorbing the details, you'll find the pace moving a lot faster. You know what I mean? Because you're like, damn, how do you do that? How do you do that? You know, just that type of stuff. So it's a multiple watch movie. I don't know how many times we've said this in other reviews. This is a multiple watch movie. So Deckard gets to the Bradbury. Sebastian is now deceased at this point. Pris has put on the kind of, what would you call that, guys? A disguise to blend in with all the other kind of aesthetic of the room.
Yeah, she presents herself as this mannequin doll, I guess.
Yeah,
perfectly still, and you
exactly.
know what's gonna happen.
Yep.
And it's good the way it's executed as well.
Yeah, so Deckard's up there in the room full of Sebastian's experiments, which kind of has all those other kind of doll mannequins, as Gaz said, and other kind of genetic things that we referenced earlier. You guys have been watching the movie, right? The whole movie is Deckard hunting down these replicants, getting into squabbles with them, shooting them or fighting them or whatever. So obviously Deckard gets attacked by Pris. You know that Pris is her love interest is Roy. So you know they're together and all that. You saw like Roy kissed her when he first got to Sebastian's. So she attacks Deckard. It's kind of this iconic cyberpunk sequence. She does this kind of like, I believe that's like an acrobatic expert that does the kind of front flip attack when she first comes at him with the kind of acrobatic move, Gaz. I believe that was a stunt double, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of have a squabble. She kind of gets on Deckard's neck, and he's almost about to get choked out again with her thighs. I think he ultimately gets his pistol back in the struggle, and he shoots her a few times. She kind of has that like iconic death of her kind of like spasming, you know, which is, that's, I'd say right up there with Zora running through the glass panes, crashing through the glass panes as she's shot in the back, the slow-mo kill. It's kind of another, all the replicant deaths are like these very poetic, you know, beautiful kind of violent but beautifully shot scenes that are supposed to, you know, give them that full lifespan that, you know, they had a limited life, but they lived it to the fullest. And the way that their life is kind of stomped out, it's supposed to give you that kind of like unethical, you know, feeling. Like, first of all, none of this would be happening if Tyrell wasn't building the models, right?
Yeah,
so,
it's still to give them a human quality, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though they're replicants,
like,
because
they're fighting back. They're trying to fight for more, you know.
Because, you know, before, when Deckard first goes into that room that you was describing, where you've got like the mini little hobbit kind of.
Yeah. I used the M word, which probably just got us demonetized. You're maybe not supposed to say that anymore, but.
Well, you got these smaller creatures, I guess. There's a notable one a lot of people always remember is this little guy who kind of looks like a Napoleonic soldier who's kind of on guard duty. And I think when Deckard first, in one of the versions of the movie, when he's walking around that room trying to find Pris, I think that little guy is in there, and he's kind of got like the Pinocchio nose, and he's looking very nervous, on edge as Deckard's walking around. And she sat still like a mannequin, and you know, obviously she's going to spring to life and attack him, and then that sets up the entire scene that Ross has just described. And there was a point to this where I was going with it, and because this is true PXM style, that point is now just decided to go.
Well, there's two. I think I want to say when Deckard comes in, the dude bumps into the wall like he always does. He's marching through and he bumps into the wall, and then the other dude is like a teddy bear, like an animation of like a teddy bear modern head. So there's two of them. Those characters are awesome. They're very random side characters. If you guys are interested in them, I think the video game does have a reappearance of them. They would do a little bit more with them. And again, that's a theme they could have explained a lot more. I don't know how much of that is in the source material of Do Androids Dream, of how much they go into Sebastian and his origin and his backdrop and his, you know, up in the Bradbury there of what he's doing with the experiments. But definitely, like, it makes the movie awesome. So Batty ultimately arrives at the Bradbury coming from Tyrell Corporation and finds Pris's body. So that's how now you know it's getting on at this point. Deckard is dispatched of Zora, he didn't really kill Leon, but Rachel did, but it was with Deckard's gun in the struggle. Deckard was there, and then that's Pris. So Roy Batty is all that's left of the 4 at this point. Roy's inception date is coming now because he didn't get the answer from Tyrell that he wanted. So as he's tracking Deckard through the building, you get this very, as Gaz was saying earlier, a very The Shining, here's Johnny scene of Roy Batty chasing Deckard through the floors of the empty hotel. And Roy's body starts shutting down from, the proteins are instant, when it hits that 4-year date, it's just like a complete retirement shutdown. So you can see like his hands are black and gray because they're dying out, and he takes a nail out of the like rusty wet floorboard and sticks it through his hand to get a response to keep going, which is a grimy scene.
Yeah, it is, and that's I love the way. Yeah, Fear Factory, man.
Classic quote.
Oh man, take a whole other show. We could do a whole show just examining the whole concepts behind Fear Factory albums, man.
Yeah. And metal movie references in general.
Hell, man, yeah. I like the way that Roy, when he starts coming after Deckard in this scene, the way he moves around the apartment as well starts. I love the way they show that because it's. The way he moves is fast, but although yes, they appear human, it gives you a visual of this is something that isn't human. In that sense,
for sure.
Moves differently.
He becomes more like primal, like he takes his shirt off and then
hunter, isn't he?
Starts like howling at him like a werewolf, and it's just it's a very like horror kind of scene. Just gives you that like horror feel. So when he dives through the hallway and Deckard shoots at him, like I love how like he's giving him this rant. Gaz said he's like that shooting at an unarmed opponent. He's like that was very unsportsmanlike. He like starts giving him this like sportsman like they're playing polo or something, like kind of British sportsman rules. He keeps on referencing like sportsmanship and all that stuff, which is the dialogue is just the dialogue becomes increasingly sane through this third act from here to that final monologue. So we'll do a little detail of the fight. We'll get them up to the roof. So Deckard, there's some really good angles of like the close up of the side of Deckard's pistol and the water. The water's dripping through the hotel, so it's very wet. It's all waterlogged and soggy at the top, and so the water's dripping down through all the rooms. And Roy smashes through the wall. He keeps smashing through the walls, like Gaz was saying. Grabs Deckard's pistol, pulls it through the wall, breaks a couple of his fingers. He counts it down. He's like, "This is for Zora. This is for Pris." Breaks his fingers as he counts them off, then puts the pistol back in his hand and gives it back to him. If you haven't seen the movie, it's probably not how you expected it was going to go, but that's like Gaz was saying with the random replicant behavior. You know what I mean? Just keeps you guessing for this final act. So Deckard switches left hand, obviously not his dominated hand, tries to get Roy through the wall, but obviously misses because he's, it's more harder to aim with your, without your dominant hand. And just basically running around shadowy rooms from that point on.
But there's even a good camera angle on when Deckard is trying to climb up to the top of the building, and he climbs up. I guess what can be only described the best way is like this huge giant bookcase, and he drops his pistol on the floor, and he knows I haven't got enough time to get down there because Roy is coming, and he gets to the top and then gets on top of the building, and then. That sets us up to then where Deckard then gets outside of the building. He's like on the ledge, and then Roy comes along, and it's just very short line. It's just the way it says, "Where are you going?" I thought that was hilarious.
Oh wait. So Roy keeps popping out of random places and like yelling at him here and there. Like he's he looks through the window at one point. He's like, "I see you, Deckard." But then there's the one Gaz was talking about in the bathroom. He smashes his head on like this is even like more Here's Johnny than Here's Johnny from The Shining. Yeah. He literally bashes his head through the wall And what does he say to him, guys? It's something about
says, "What are you doing?" Then it's like, "Where are you going?"
Oh, and he says something about like sportsmanship again, right? He's like, "I'm going to give you like 2 more seconds or something." Like, yeah. So he smashes. I don't know if it's through a mirror. I think it's through the tiles, right? It's through the bathroom tiles. He bashes his head through it.
It's just so random, hilarious. Like there's Deckard is on the ledge, and then Roy sticks his head out again, and then Deckard's trying to climb up to the top. To top of the building to get higher. It's just where you're going.
It's the whole. This third act is like one of the best acts in sci-fi history, if not cyberpunk history of all time. So up on the rainy rooftop,
just after that,
Deckard's up there. Roy makes it up there to him. He takes another route or whatever because Deckard obviously climbed out through the hole in the ceiling and outside the window or whatever on the ledge.
Yeah, that's where you're going, yeah.
Deckard tries to run across to the building, the next building over, like literally hop from building to building. He makes it, but he only catches on to the metal kind of post hanging off, so he almost slips off and falls. Roy has a dove at this point. It's like pouring rain. He runs after him and makes the jump. Little production note. So when they were shooting that, guys, they had them farther apart. And Rutger was telling Ridley, he's like, "Hey, dude, push that a foot further." He's like, "I can make that jump." And Ridley was like, "Dude, you're one of my like co-stars." He's like, "I can't have you making jumps." He's like, "Just have the stunt double do it." He's like, "Because if you miss that," he's like, "you are the second face of the movie." He's like, I need you intact." Anyway, Hauer convinced him, so they pushed it close together, and Roy made that jump for real, yeah. So Rutger made that jump for real. Anyway, just if you guys watch the scene, you'll see it. Like, it looks crazy, right? Yeah. So Deckard's about to fall. Roy, this is spoiler alert. If you've never seen Blade Runner, we're gonna talk about the ending, so you'll need to skip this if you haven't seen it, or pause, go watch Blade Runner, then come back to the show. Deckard falls. Roy catches him with the hand that he put the nail through and holds him up and saves him. Mac brought this up. If you care to weigh in the comments when you see this, up until this point, Roy has only killed humans in the plot. So this is like one of the nods to what Gaz was insinuating earlier with the I don't know if you're going to talk about this already, with the director's cut with the unicorn dream that Deckard had when he fell asleep on the bed when Rachel was playing piano. Roy saving Deckard could possibly be a nod to Deckard not being human, because that would be the first human Roy saved in the movie, which doesn't really add up. So Gaz was coming to it, the Tears in the Rain monologue. Rutger Hauer delivers the most iconic sci-fi monologue at all time of a death scene. It's called the Tears in the Rain speech. You guys can go watch it. The scene is even on YouTube, I believe. Actually, you know what? If I find the scene on YouTube, I'll link it here for you guys. It's worth seeing, even if you don't even want to watch the movie at all. He dies right in front of Deckard after the speech, lets the dove fly out of his hand, and then that's where the final cut uses Deckard's last internal monologue narration, which actually got removed from the other versions of the movie. So so we'll get into the ending, unless you have more on that, guys, because I know that's a major scene.
I just think it still stands up as one of the most poetic standout scenes in film history as a whole. Here. That speech, Slipknot will be well aware of this. That sample, that speech has been used in so many by so many metal bands. It's insane. Once again, it shows you, even though the replicants aren't human, they are on this quest to essentially, I guess, be human, the equivalent, to find their identity, their place in the universe, I guess. And it really does make you feel pity, sympathy, and very sad as well, as to what happens. The whole way he describes, like, I've seen things you haven't seen, memories now they're gonna, I know I'm not quoting this 100% here, but now they're gonna fade, like, tears in the rain as the title of the monologue. And it's something, whenever you mention Blade Runner to anyone who's seen it, that monologue speech is something that always gets mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. And that is because Rutger Hauer actually wrote that monologue, which, as you were saying, Fire Pixie, I think that makes him maybe one of the best sci-fi characters of all time, because if you watch the documentary or the thing I showed earlier, the making of the film, or it might even be on YouTube, any Ridley Scott interview on Blade Runner, I'm sure they're going to ask him. So Rutger wrote that Tears in the Rain speech and brought it to Ridley, and Ridley's like, listen, I've had actors try to write lines before. He's like, and it's just outside their realm, right? Actors show up to the show and they act. That's because, somebody like Fancher already wrote the script for him, so usually it's all pre-produced, right? So basically what Scott was saying is actors write absolutely horrible dialogue. Hey, director, I have a really good idea, and they show it, and the director's like, no, this is not a really good idea. But that's basically what Ridley was saying he was thinking, and then Rutger handed it to him, he read it, and he was like, oh my God, this is one of the best things I've ever, not only was his reaction, this is terrible, it was the exact opposite, like, this is literally incredible, it's perfect, That's pretty much the only time I know personally of that happening. I mean, I'm sure it's happened on other things, but that's really the only, notable one that I know about of that happening. So, again, as we said, there's 7 versions of the movie, guys. So what we're going to be covering here is the final cut. If you want us to cover variations or other versions, we're open to it. Just put it in the live chat or the comments. But the way this one ends, after Deckard's on the roof, is he goes back to his apartment, where I think is that when Rachel was sleeping in his bed under the sheet.
Rachel's under there.
He pulls the sheet, so she's there. Because she still trusts him. Like they're in love now, I guess, if you can, believe that for the duration of the movie. And he's got his gun drawn because he doesn't know, like, who's coming for Rachel. Did the cops send more Blade Runners, blah, blah, blah. A little paranoid. They're about to escape out the door. As they're leaving, as Gaz referenced, he finds the origami call sign from Gaff, which is, I think it's the crane, right? I think that one is the crane, maybe?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that was one of the other nods that you could, some people have alluded to is, Deckard a replicant, but certainly says, I'll be coming for Rachel.
As Gaz said, Gaff only really has, let's go into the Gaff thing because he left that call sign there. He only has like maybe 3 or 4 scenes in the movie. There's when he pulls up on Deckard to recruit him for Bryant. There's when they go to Leon's house for the investigation. He might have one in between when he was telling him Bryant is coming down after Zora. But he's only no more than 4 or 5, I would say.
No more than that, because just after Roy passes, that's when I think Gaff does appear and says something like, "You're out now, you quit," isn't there?
Yeah, when Deckard's leaving. So right before, so this is, up until here, I would say that they pretty much present Gaff as Bryant's lackey, like he's just a Blade Runner, he's going to do whatever the office tells him up until this point. But then, like we just said, pay attention, guys, Gaff left the origami crane at Deckard's apartment, meaning he knows Rachel's there, and he didn't do anything about it. The orders from the station were for the Blade Runners to kill any rogue replicant. That includes Rachel. That's what Bryant told Deckard. He told him, you got to kill Rachel. So right before Deckard leaves, or right before Gaff leaves, he said, it's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does? Gaff ultimately has the line that brings the entire movie together, and then they bring it back again when Deckard finds the crane, the origami. It plays the audio of Deckard thinking of that Gaff line again. Yeah. What that all shows you is like Gaff was friends with Deckard, and he respected him as a Blade Runner, because if not, he could have just went to Deckard's house and killed Rachel. That's what the police station wanted him to do. You know what I mean? So like it really gives a lot more mythos to Gaff. Whereas through the whole movie you think like, okay, Brian just keeps sending Gaff to bring Deckard back, basically, right? But it shows that they're actually friends, which I thought was pretty awesome. It kind of resonated with me on the last watch. Gaff does appear in Blade Runner 2049. I want to say, so you guys could check that out just to see that his character is still alive in the future. Like I don't know, Edward James Olmos is the man. I just want to make sure he gets his flowers. I love that guy.
He was really good in the Battlestar Galactica 2000s series.
Yeah, he's good in everything.
That guy's insane.
dude, his repertoire and his resume is just. We'd have to do a solo Edward James show, and I know Mac is a big Edward James fan, so we'll point that as well as this other stuff. There's also that other movie that's kind of based on the Zodiac crimes. That was called the Limbic region, I think, which is cool. That's him also. So anyway, that's it. So the way the final cut ends, guys, is right in Deckard's door there, the elevator, whatever you want to call that, his foyer. Right after the quote, he's got his gun up, he looks at the origami, and it cuts. It just goes straight to the Blade Runner end themes, the Evangelist song from from the score, from the soundtrack. Now, the director's cut, I think the theatrical version, possibly the work print, they all have one extra scene, so I'm going to mention it. So that's Deckard and Rachel driving north through the forest in the car through the trees. I think they should have kept that in the final cut, guys. I'm gonna be real, because Deckard's leaving with Rachel anyway. You know that they're most likely going to leave the city. So and that's only like a 10-second scene. So I think they should have just kept that in the final cut, in my opinion. I don't. Do you have any? Does it matter to you whether it cuts off?
No, I think they do, because it gives a bit of credence to the romance story.
Yeah, agreed.
And then later in 2049, spoiler alert for those.
It picks up from there.
Yeah, because you find out that he was I'm just going to say he has a child with Rachel.
They ultimately stay together. All you really need to know is they ultimately do stay together after that. And again, that doesn't really affect 2049 because it's not even really about Deckard. So don't worry about Gaz giving you that spoiler. It really has no effect on the movie. That was what I was talking about earlier, guys. So Ridley contacted Stanley Kubrick for some of his extra footage of The Shining. So all of that, like the big trees and the forest stuff with the road and that Blade Runner. So like I said, it shows them. Basically, what it shows is this, guys. If you haven't seen those other versions, Deckard and Rachel driving away in the car with the car panning out into the distance, and then a pull out of all the trees. Just to show you that it's like the Great North Wilderness, like it's outside the city or whatever, maybe northern central or northern California, whatever you're. Not like it's like I said, it's Blade Runner. It's not like it's going to be explained to you, but you get the idea that it's not the city because every other shot you've seen throughout this whole movie has been the city. So yeah, Scott actually got that footage from Kubrick for The Shining, which is, I don't know why that is. I guess Scott and Kubrick are friends, guys, because they're both British directors. I know neither of them lived in the States at any time, which is like why their films were so protected and more detailed films and not like the typical Hollywood trash that you get by British directors that are like, well, I'll just move to LA and make every Marvel piece of crap. Like those guys stayed in England for their careers, and trust me, it shows. Trust me, it shows, because Ridley Scott doesn't really have any bad movies, and neither does Stanley Kubrick. And you know why that is? If either of those guys moved to Hollywood, they would have been brought crap on their desk every day, and they would have made like 50 garbage pieces of crap. But their careers were well preserved and safe in England.
Polished turds.
So I never looked into like why it is, but I assume just because they're both local UK dudes, and I assume they're friends because they're both in the same field. But I always love that there's like a Blade Runner, like The Shining connection, and like even though one's a sci-fi, one's a horror movie, and they have nothing to do to each other, you actually have crossover footage that's in both films. It's just kind of a crazy thing. It's like a little secret bonus, little knick-knack, little factoid. Which is sick. So that, again, to go in the variations, guys, and that's the big question, Slipknot, is, so I put it to you guys, depending on what version you watch or what do you prefer, how do you have it playing out? Do you like the insinuations, the ambiguity of the Fancher script that Deckard is a replicant, or you prefer a more clear-cut Harrison Ford take on it, that Ford likes Deckard as human, Ridley Scott likes Deckard as a replicant, and that's pretty crazy when you have the lead star and the director both disagreeing on the film.
This day as well.
Because Scott has interviews up until now like, hey, what if Deckard is an Nexus 7? What if Rachel's an Nexus 7? It's awesome. Of course, a stellar Rutger Hauer career performance. So this concept goes back to like Philip K. Dick when he wrote Screamers. A lot of people look to Screamers as the source material for Terminator, and of course you could make that whole argument that supposedly Terminator comes from that other story, but it's also pretty similar to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, right? Like Fire Pixie is saying, the bioengineered synths with the fake rubber skin, that all comes from androids and Blade Runner way before it comes from Terminator.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't mention this, but of course, bioengineering, even beyond AI, I think you have a question of genetic manipulation and cloning. But, you know, Blade Runner raises all of those modern ethical dilemmas now, 40 years ago.
Especially if you look into defense research, things that supposedly experimental, again, could be a whole other show within itself. No, I'm not a replicant. I am not having a momentary episode for getting speech there.
Interlinked.
Yeah,
we got to update Gaz's vocabulary.
Yeah, it's fun.
Malfunction. We're both shorting out. Neither of us are real.
Slipknot's just said, I think I prefer Deckard as human. Yeah, I do actually. I think I do. I do. I know there's some that don't, but yeah, I do.
I prefer the ambiguity, but I prefer him as a human as well.
Some particularly fun facts as well that I noticed, you know, little background details as well. One is, I have to mention this, the Atari sign in the background.
Oh yeah,
that wasn't a good omen for how that business would go, was it? That time they were like one of the, you know, big gaming manufacturers, companies, etc. Well, briefly came back with the Atari Jaguar, didn't they?
Yeah.
And so I thought
that gets brought back in the 2049 too. It's featured pretty prominently.
Oh, yeah, man. See, I've forgotten that.
Yeah, see, we could cover that. I mean, again, that'd be cool for us to do 2049 for you guys because we could cover the overlap and the comparisons and the lore. Okay, so I said I would give this to. I want to get your take on this, guys, because you guys gonna crap your pants. So alternate Deckard castings, if you guys and appreciate you guys weighing in with your.
Let me just take a drink before I choke.
You're gonna need it. Yeah, because if I tell you this while you're drinking, you'll spit it all over your camera. You know, if you guys have any guesses that you want to put in the live chat for who you think got looked at for Deckard, weigh in. Some of these are my favorite actors. Some of them are completely different. You know, ridiculous. Let me find them for you guys. So, just give me a second here, guys. Okay. Like I said, guys, some good, some bad.
Okay,
Ford was looking for a role with dramatic depth. According to production documents, several actors were considered for the role, including Gene Hackman. That's not that bad. Sean Connery, guys. That's like a 007 Deckard. Like,
yeah, I could see it to a point maybe, but I don't think he'd quite have the rugged kind of feel that Deckard known. So
I just don't see Deckard as a Brit, even though it has no merit. I mean, if he's in Los Angeles, I'd prefer an American, but not like it matters. There's plenty of British actors who could just drop the accent.
I think it's with the portrayal as well. I think he still needs a bit of that ruggedness. I think
agreed.
Have that little bit of finity too much. For example, was it the movie Rising Sun? Sean Connery's in, and he's still kind of got that gentleman aspect there, but it kind of works. With the Japanese culture, I don't think it would have flown in this one.
I could agree. Jack Nicholson, does he have the ruggedness?
Oh, Jack, legendary actor. Oh man,
he's so good, but he's never done like a detective like noir thing that I know of.
I don't want to say no because he's such a good actor.
And of course, The Shining. So it's like I honestly I think Jack would have been a better Roy Batty than he would be a Deckard. You know?
Yeah.
He's more, and you know, Paul Newman. I don't know anything about Paul Newman, but I suppose he did like a lot of old type of that stuff. You know, noir detective shit. Clint Eastwood. Gaz brought up Dirty Harry earlier, so how about Clint? Go ahead, Roy.
I'd have been funny him running down, man, with his guns. That's a classic line,
just a massive magnum. He just blows Leon's head off, Dirty Harry style. Tommy Lee Jones, guys. I love Tommy Lee Jones.
Do you know, Tommy might not have been bad actually.
Yeah. I mean, I just like him in general. I don't know about for Deckard. You know, I'm just reading to you guys. I'm not. You know, this next one should get you pretty good, guys. You should see this coming. More like a Total Recall type of thing. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Deckard.
Let me get in position for it, man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger as Deckard. Come on, Roy, I'll kill you. He just takes him and just snaps him in half.
I love him, but no.
He's just an economic girly man replicant. Come on, Brian. You know.
That's a job, man.
Arnold as Deckard. I mean, okay, screw it. Just make me a little animation short film, or just a little short film of Arnold as Deckard with the freaking trench coat on, just so I can watch it for my own personal.
With Crom references as well. Like it's in this futuristic dystopian city, but
yeah, so they
talking at Crom. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so they said that, you know, Ford essentially got casted for Blade Runner, you know, because of his Star Wars repertoire, you know what I mean? And not 100%, but, you know, come on, let's call it a spade with a spade. That's what Fire Pixie said here, you know.
But not fancy Christopher Lambert.
Chris Lambert's the man. I don't think he's on the list, but I love Highlander. I don't see him here, but I mean, I could do it. I like Chris.
Yeah, I think Chris could. Yeah.
Peter Falk, I don't know anything about him. Nick Nolte, I mean, he's got the grit, you know.
Certainly got the grit.
He's got the grit.
Yeah, could have been impossible.
Okay, this next one, I don't know. Al Pacino. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. A little short for Deckard.
Ooh.
I mean, I would have liked to seen Al's take on it, honestly, like more like a Heat type of thing.
As Bryant, maybe. I think More's the police captain.
Yeah, or I was thinking like a villain replicant, you know, because Al's Scarface is so sick. Again, whatever. I'm just reading you guys' production notes. I don't know. And the last one they have is Burt Reynolds. I mean, dude, Burt got floated for everything back in the day. Try finding a 80s, 90s movie that they didn't send to Burt, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought some of those alternate castings were funny, guys. I hope you found them as amusing as I did. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'm like,
no, that's a standout, isn't it?
There's not like a Philip K. Dick, like 80s, 90s Arnold that they didn't consider him for. Like, you know, I wonder what Phil thinks. Hey, Arnold, you know, just he's too jacked for Deckard. Like, Deckard's like an older, burnt-out cop, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the Japanese and Chinese writing displayed around the city in advertisements. I learned both languages and so new details be revealed to me. Yeah, man, I would love to get the translations. Like, I don't know if they have any YouTube videos on that Slipknot. It'd be cool to see if anybody broke down any of the background translations, the ads. Of course, you have the iconic one of the lady with the soup and the noodles, the Japanese kind of geisha lady that plays through the roof of the Bradbury when Deckard's going there at the end. That's one of the iconic shots.
So is insurance, is car insurance quite high for flying cars then in LA? As they had these in 2019, just wondered how high it was when you were flying around.
That's what I was saying. So friggin' when Gaff makes him go to Bryant's the first time, he takes his noodles to go, and I'm like, it's a flying car. What happens if Gaff gets an emergency call and he gasses it, and Deckard's noodles go all over his face? Kieran Beer on the blimp. That's cool. I wonder if Kieran Beer is still around. Could have been a comedy with Burt Reynolds. Well, now we're back to Michael Jackson musical territory in The Crow. So, you know.
Another fun fact. Sorry, go on, man. No, go on, man. I'll say in a minute.
I don't want to see a Blade Runner comedy. That's my only point. Go ahead, guys.
Another scene I noticed, which I'm sure has just escaped my mind the numerous times I've watched it, was like the little folks the little folks who kind of take bits off the car.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like a Formula One pit crew. All of a sudden,
the scavengers. Yeah. I think Deckard was watching one of the videos or got a video call, and then they jumped on the back of the car. That's it. He's like, "Hey, get the hell off my car!" Yeah, that's a random. It just shows you the urban decay of the street class of 2019, Los Angeles. I think that's pretty much. Smells like something's burning in here, or it's just a normal smell of my apartment. Who knows, guys? You know, it's totally normal here at PXF. We're going to go with our, so that's basically all we have, guys. Weigh in with the rest of your thoughts on Blade Runner. Again, we essentially went off the final cut. Me personally, I prefer the U.S. theatrical. If you guys ever want the variation of the comparison, let us know. Blade Runner 2049, if you want us to cover that, let us know. So the genres of this are artificial intelligence, like Pixie said, cyber thriller, cyberpunk, dystopian sci-fi, action drama, sci-fi thriller. And I think we could basically get into our ratings. I'm a little dismayed that this only has an 8.1 on IMDb, but it's IMDb. Mine is, you guys can't really see, it's kind of blurry. Mine's a 10. 10 out of 10 Blade Runner. I'm a Blade Runner fanboy. You asked me about this quite a while ago, Slipknot. Yeah, I'm a Blade Runner fanboy. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, do you know, people are gonna be thinking, what's wrong with this guy, the eternally miserable one? He's gonna give something. I think this might be the only third time I've done it. I'm sure I will be on other PXF Classics and stuff as we cover. But I'm at 10. So, just for the storytelling, the subtle references, for everything that is inspired since, both from a literature standpoint, gaming, music, other films. You know, it's the benchmark of cyberpunk.
Characterization.
that's showing you that struggle for humanity, even from the replicant standpoint. Now, this has just popped in my mind, which now forgotten his name. Gaff, the actor.
Yeah, Edward James Olmos.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, interesting fun fact: he starred in the Battlestar Galactica reboot, which is actually really good. And the Cylons, the ones that aren't like the standard kind of soldier tinhead kind of dudes, which are all these like metallic kind of robots, I guess. The ones that are human, and this is what's interesting, is this. I think it's been a while since I've watched it, y'all, so my memory will be a bit fuzzy on this. There's so many models of them, like 6 or 7 models of them.
Yep.
And what's interesting is they're on their quest to find their place as well. If you like, they're not human, but they're searching for their humanity, their place as well. So it's interesting that I've forgotten his name again now. Gaff is involved in another series which kind of has that
similar
thematic as well.
Yeah, thematic theme.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, no, Edward James Olmos is the man.
Yeah.
Like, he's in the show Mayans, which is like the Sons of Anarchy spinoff.
Yeah.
But Edward James Olmos is by far the best character in that. Guys. So again, just a quick highlight of the actors. Of course, Roy Batty, Rutger Hauer, rest in peace. One of my favorite actors of all time.
So,
like you're saying, Pixie. Of course, Harrison Ford. If you don't know who he is, you're definitely on the wrong channel. Directed by Ridley Scott. Sean Young's depiction of Rachel. Like we said, rest in peace, Emmett Walsh. Yeah. Daryl Hannah, Priss, William Sanderson. It's almost a bit Joe Turkel. It's almost even Zora. It's almost a bit of an ensemble cast, even though I don't know how known some of these people were, at that time. But you know what I mean. It's definitely an interesting picture. Blade Runner, 10 out of 10, PXF Classic. I think that's basically everything that we had on it. Fury Usyk coming up, Pixie. I don't know if you're about to watch this Fury Usyk fight. And we owe you that UFC 300 review. We'll see what we can do about getting it up on Moshinobi for you.
Yeah, definitely. This quick, what's slipping on my site? Oh, someone just pointed out, here's another fun fact. There you go.
One of those little car part thieves at Blade Runner. The site said he had an accident on Blade Runner, which damages back. Okay, didn't know about that. That's crazy. We were talking about a lot of the production accidents on The Crow, 1994, of which there was many. I mean, obviously, Brandon's death kind of overshadowed it all, but The Crow was rife with production injuries, and it's pretty common. Gypsy King, baby, let's go.
Always gotta, man.
Up north.
Yeah, definitely man. He's our boy. Coming up next, folks, Mad Max Furiosa drops next week, so we will definitely be on that. Hopefully that's fire. If by any chance it's not, I will be roasting it because I'm such a Mad Max fanboy. But
either way, it's either a review or it's a roast.
Yeah. So definitely check us for that. Any new Zodiac content dropping soon, Ross?
Zodiac Files episode 4 definitely dropping soon. Gonna have some live shows and stuff. I'm just waiting for people to schedule it. But in the meantime, go check out myself and Ned DeHaan. On the last episode, we discussed Jack the Ripper and the Texarkana Phantom influence on the Zodiac crimes. Backlog stuff we owe you guys. Napoleon, Gaz and I need to watch that. I'm catching up on Kamoy about halfway through Shogun. If you guys finish Fallout, Gaz, I recommend we should get Fallout up.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I heard something about that Terminator Netflix series, Gaz. I heard that's dropping in August.
It's not too long away.
Other stuff we still have in the backlog. Look out for Point Break and Apocalypse Now coming soon. They Lives in my classic list. The Thing. We got to get the Kurosawa stuff up for you guys, and then the Zodiac goes to the movies. We haven't done too many of those yet, but like Gaz said, Dirty Harry, Bullet, all that stuff falls in that. So a bunch of series planned, guys. We'll keep it going. Probably Furiosa be the next time you guys will see us. Knocked over a pile of crap over here, guys.
I think Fire Pixie's going to give us a ticking off. She's just said there's only 3 Mad Max films as well, and yes, I love them all, but you know how much I love Fury Road as well, man.
No. That's bullcrap. That's bullcrap, Fire Pixie.
I love Fury Road.
99% of the time, we agree with you on the remakes, but Fury Road is different. Fury Road is different. Fury Road is written and directed by George Miller, the original creator of the original 3. So Fury Road is well, let's fight.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like friggin'
we'll
Tyson Fury versus Pixie over here. If you want to bring that Fury Road back, and if you keep it up, me and guys are gonna do the Fury Road review up here too. Bring it.
Hey, that might happen. It's one of my all-time faves, actually.
We'll roast it like a marshmallow. Here's the thing, like, I'm going in with zero expectations, so I want it to be good. If it's not good, that's not a me thing, that's a George Miller thing. So it's either a review or it's a roast. That's up to the film creators.
Yeah, the same, man, for sure. I'm just being a punk and metalhead as well. Just the amount of like Blade Runner and Mad Max just sampled so much. There was a band I knew from Liverpool who sampled the hell out of Mad Max 2 and Fury Road and a lot of their tracks. I was just like, man, it just added that fire. And there was a certain somebody I knew in hip hop as well. I can't think who that is. Of course, there was the Mad Max influence on the song as well. All about it. Don't know who I'm referring to. But anyway.
all good. Go Google that stuff. So links below. I'll get everything updated in the description. You can always subscribe to the Patreon if you want to support the channel. Of course, click the join button next to the subscribe button if you want to be a full-time member. There's 3 levels. It's the Gorilla, the Inspector, and the Vigilante. Check those out. Shout out to Pixie for being a member. Like we said, Z-Files episode 4 dropping soon. Probably a Furiosa review and or roast, depending on how that one goes. And then more stuff from our PXF Classic. California Love. Well, no, that's not what he was talking about. California Love has the Thunderdome, which is that's like the the Thunderdome scene, like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Go ahead, guys.
No, it's okay, man. Go ahead.
I think that's all we got, guys. Subscribe to Mosh Shinobi, like, sub, share here. Probably be back whenever we get to it, Furiosa, in the next week or so. And then Mac and I do want to do some graphic novel stuff. So if we get like James O'Barr, the Crow, the original, and check out that the Crow Days of Sodom. I shared that link last time. There's some teasers of it on YouTube. The crowdfunding campaign is over, but we'll have some updates regarding PXF and that, as well as some other, original independent film updates from us over here. So I think that's all we got, guys. Blade Runner 1982. If you're smart, go. I don't know if there's a 4K Steelbook out, but you can always get that. I have the 5-disc Blu-ray with all the bells and whistles, one of my favorite ones. If you're into books, give Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep a read. If you want to, compare how that stacks up to the film. I think that's all we got for today's show, guys. Like, sub, share, and tune in next time. PXF Paradigm Review Show, Zodiac Files episode 4 coming soon. Shout out to Slipknot fan, Fire Pixie, and everybody else who came through. Subscribe to guys over on Mosh Shinobi.
Yeah, thank you all for coming through and supporting as always. Don't forget to hit us up with any recommendations that you want us to cover, whether it's film series or things we can have a look at content-wise, stuff like that. And we shall see you next time, Mad Max Furiosa. As Ross said, don't forget to like, support, and subscribe. Stay up with everything that's happening. And we'll see you on the next episode. Peace, y'all, and have a good one. And let's go Tyson Fury.
Thanks, guys. Check out Blade Runner. Tyson Fury Usyk today, and we'll get some more MMA updates on the UFC stuff in the 300 review. We owe you, Pixie. Peace out, guys. Good show. Like, sub, share.